the stability of El Salvador for, I don't know, AI companies to come and build their data centers. I mean, you know that things in El Salvador changed in 2019, and they're never going back. I mean, El Salvador is never going to be the old El Salvador ever again, because the switch has changed in Salvadoran people. The reality is that financial inclusion requires peace and stability, first of all. Now, violence is gone, but we need to give an adequate living standard.
Josue, I'm super stoked to have you here because I've got lots and lots of questions for you.
No, thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah. I'm gonna get my money's worth out of the time we have with you here today. Make sure I come out of here understanding the energy sector.
Sure, absolutely.
But first, to start that off, some of the people that watch the podcast will know who you are, but a lot of them won't. So I would love for you to kind of give people a little bit of background. And I love your story because I feel like it exemplifies everything we're seeing here in El Salvador, like somebody who had felt they'd had to leave because there was lack of opportunities and lack of safety, who's like come back and feeling that El Salvador is one of the best places to be. So give us a little bit of your history of what took you to Switzerland and what's brought you back here.
Awesome, for sure. No, thanks for having me. So just a quick rundown. My name is Josue Lopez. I'm the CEO of Volcano Energy and a partner at Type 1 Capital. I was born and raised in El Salvador. I lived here most of my life. It was a tough time growing up here because obviously violence and all those things you hear about. It was, now we know it as the old El Salvador, but back then it was tough living here. Parents being worried all the time when you were going to school or going out if you were going out, and stuff like that. So I decided to.
So you grew up here, but you speak perfect English. So did that come from your time overseas, or did you go to one of the international schools here, or why is your English so good?
Yeah, I went to an international school.
Okay.
And I used to travel around a lot when I was a kid as well.
Which school did you go, if you don't mind me asking?
The British school.
The British school.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Which you wouldn't know because my accent is not British.
Your accent's not British, but I had a daughter that went to the American school and a son that went to the international school. So we didn't experience the British school, but I've heard good things about it.
Well, back then I could pull out a very mid British accent,
nice.
But not anymore. Anyway, so obviously I lived here through the bad part of El Salvador, but at the time, it just felt like El Salvador was the normal and what we knew.
You're just more worried about being a teenager and all the stuff that goes with that.
Just doing homework and getting good grades and getting to a good school and all that stuff. And in the background was obviously all the violence and all the things that we didn't know we couldn't do because we were just, we were born that way. It was a normality for us.
Hey guys, just a brief interruption. We'll get back to the exciting show here, but I just want to really ask a favor that you guys could make sure that you're subscribed if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on a podcast, please take a second and review this. You don't even have to write a lengthy review or anything at all. Just click the number of stars that you want to give us. It really helps us in the algorithms to make sure people are finding out about what's happening here. All right, back to the show.
So my story is very similar to most people that come from international schools in El Salvador. You've probably heard a lot of similar stories. As soon as they're able, they just leave because there's no opportunities in El Salvador, or there was no opportunities in El Salvador. So you get into the roadmap is you get good grades, you never go out because you're going to get killed or kidnapped or whatever. And then you graduate, then you leave El Salvador and you usually never come back. So that's what I did, or that was my roadmap. I left as soon as I could when I was 17 or beginning of 18.
Is that when you went to Switzerland, or did you go somewhere else?
Well, I went to the U.S. first.
Okay.
And then after...
For university?
Yeah, for university. Okay. And then after a semester, I decided I wanted to live in Switzerland. I wanted to study economics and math. So that's what I did. Around that time, I think, there was this big show called Billions. about a hedge fund and so
yeah.
on. So I was watching, and I just suddenly decided that I wanted to be in finance, and I switched my career from engineering to finance or economics. In the blink of an eye, I moved to Switzerland, and I started going to school there. And at the same time, I was very interested in alternative investments or anything that I could, any new thesis of investing. At this time, I had no clue what Bitcoin was. So I went to this.
So what year was that? Just for
So it was
context.
2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're young. Wow.
25.
Wow. Crazy.
Anyway.
Half my age.
Yeah.
Literally.
Anyway, around that time, I went to this forum called the Alternative Investment Summit in Geneva, and I met my soon-to-be professor, and he spoke about Bitcoin. He spoke about all these things and how Bitcoin was borderless, it was censorship-less, it was decentralized, and I really liked the idea of it. So I started, I would say at that time playing around with it. And it was very hard moving money from El Salvador to Switzerland because banks here are terrible.
Yeah.
So in order to do an international transaction, you would have to pay 5 to 10%. It was horrible. And at that time,
that's if you could get them to actually release it and
exactly.
not, flag it and hold it.
Exactly. And at that time, my parents paid for my school, paid for my living and all that. So I wanted to find cheaper ways to move the money around. So I just they had a friend that sold them Bitcoin, and they moved it, and then I sold it in Switzerland, and I got the Swiss francs, and it worked perfectly. I think I ended up paying like 2 or 3%, which is very expensive now, but at the time it was amazing.
And probably 10 times as fast as if you would have waited for the wire to clear.
Exactly. But I did it as an experiment,
Yeah.
I didn't do it periodically. After that, it was just my normal credit cards and so on. I didn't know my life would fall back into Bitcoin eventually. So I started working at this fund, which
And
is
where in Switzerland were you?
in Geneva.
In Geneva,
Yeah.
okay.
So I started working in this private equity fund, and they had this thesis of investing in disruptive technologies. So we would do everything from agriculture online market investing and sort of digital pharmacies and all these really cool things that I was very attracted to as a young guy. Back in 2019, I think it was in the end of 2019, Bukele had already won the election here, and I would always tell my board, listen, let's invest something in emerging economies, particularly El Salvador, but if not, somewhere in Latin America, that would be fine. But it was always our resounding no, with quotes of credit ratings and violence and corruption, which was easy to understand. I mean, and they were right.
Yeah.
And
the Swiss tend to be a little risk averse.
Exactly.
Too, so.
And I think I was probably in the most risk tolerant fund in Switzerland, and even they were like, no, we're not going to invest in Latin America. But anyway, around 2019, the fund decided to launch their Bitcoin mining initiative. It's a really nice venture. We had to learn it from the ground up, and it grew like weeds. I mean, at the time, Bitcoin mining was not popular like it is now. Just a couple of people were mining Bitcoin. I think the entire hash rate might be mistaken, but it was probably around 30 or 60 exahash. So it was, a tenth or less of what it is now. And we started mining using cheap Nordic energy. So we started in Norway, and it eventually grew to be.
And was that like geothermal or?
No, it was mostly hydro.
Oh, mostly hydro.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that gave me the first, I would say, actual interest in Bitcoin. As I said before, I had tried it, I had used it, but more as an experiment. I never saved in Bitcoin. In fact, I'm ashamed to say, but I'm sure it's a story of many Bitcoiners that, once I got tired with Bitcoin and I was like, oh, its bull run is over, I'm going to try with other shit coins and altcoins. So I had my period of disgrace and and playing around with all those memes and stuff. But then I got back, I got cleansed. We started mining a lot of Bitcoin. It soon became, as I said, the largest European miner in the world.
And were you guys just mining in Europe, or
Yeah.
okay?
We were mining a lot. And I started learning a lot about energy and Bitcoin. At this time, I had already graduated, so this was after COVID. This thing in China happened where, we saw our revenue sort of levelize as more people were catching on to mining. And then suddenly the hash rate market went to half because China banned mining. And so it was another bull run, not only for Bitcoin, but it was a bull run for mining as well.
So you guys didn't have any exposure in China, so it was all upside for you.
It was all
guys.
Europe,
Yeah.
and we were already hosting. So
your price,
once things blew
yeah.
up in China, everyone was trying to get their machines out and host them somewhere in a what we called a stable jurisdiction, and so we were overflowing with demand.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the right play at the right moment, and after that, we exited the company. We started working. We started coming to El
What do you mean
Salvador.
you exited the company?
I mean, we started offloading our shares in the company,
Okay.
and just sort of diversifying into other things.
The fund did.
Yeah, the fund
Okay.
did. And diversifying into other things like data centers, sort of HPCs, high-powered computers, and so on. AI didn't even figure in the map back then, but we started investing a lot in data centers and building them everywhere in the world. And we had a really good knowledge about energy, or at least I did. I like generation. I like renewable energy, particularly hydros and solar. I still didn't know much about geothermal and wind. But around 2021, obviously the Bitcoin law was passed. So we were called here to advise on the Bitcoin law since we ran the largest mining operation in Europe. It seemed like a good fit. And back then, the government was pushing really hard for El Salvador to be able to mine Bitcoin using the volcanoes, and it became all this massive buzz. And the idea was great. I mean, one of the highest density of volcanoes per capita in the world are in El Salvador, and you have, since 1933, I believe it was, you have the capacity to turn that geothermal reservoir into energy. So it sounded perfect. I mean, El Salvador already had 2 geothermal plants, so let's use Bitcoin mining so that we can exploit more of that geothermal energy and develop it. And it all sounded amazing. So we advised on the law. We advised on the mining and energy development law as well. And I started coming back and noticing that the country was different, and that there was hope, and that there was no more violence. So, yeah, around a year later.
Was it hard for you to get used to that, like, especially being gone and then coming back? And because you grew up with this sense of like, oh, we don't go to these areas, or you don't go out at night, or you don't, oh, why doesn't that place have a guard with a gun out in front? It must not be safe to eat there. Like, was it hard, or were you able to kind of like, or did it seem normal since you were coming from Switzerland?
Not at all.
And it seemed...
I mean, the first time we came, I came with my former partners from Switzerland, and I remember the fund had arranged 2 cop cars to escort us everywhere, and then we would drive around in a car, and it was just so normal, that felt normal. But then driving around, and I noticed government people were just driving around by themselves. I saw Max and Stacy walking around in Soyapango, sort of on their own with no bodyguards, and I was like, oh, these gringos are gonna get killed. Then I realized that it wasn't them that were wrong, it was me, because I hadn't lived in El Salvador, so I didn't know these changes. I mean, I saw them on the news, but I thought they were fake. And my parents would also tell me, like, listen, El Salvador's changing and all that. When I decided to come more often, by then I was coming maybe twice a year in 2022. Then 2023, I decided I would just come every 2 months or 3 months and work here, set up an office here. So I started coming more and more, and the country was different. I mean, it was amazing to see just, the same people that I told in 2019 to invest in El Salvador and Latin America, and they told me no. Those same people were calling me in 2023, like, listen, how can we get in on this? And it was great. And then because of that demand, we launched Type 1 Capital in 2023. And the main idea was like, look, we know all these investors. We know of places where we can invest this in. So let's start attracting capital from abroad, and let's invest it in El Salvador. And that's exactly what we did. One of the
So I don't know if it's public or not, how much you raised, or if you give us a ballpark, but
we've raised close to 300 million
Okay.
and executed close to that amount. A big chunk of that has been in energy and infrastructure and tourism. So it has been quite amazing, the fact that El Salvador now has it has the access to this capital.
Yeah.
Because back then, the only way that entrepreneurs could build their companies was through debt. There were no capital markets.
and even that
except for-
was expensive and
even
hard
that was
to
expensive. I
come
mean,
by.
it's still
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah.
It's still 10 to 14%.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Risk capital was not even something not even in the vocabulary of Salvadorans. And things started changing. I mean, El Salvador became more attracted, more and more capital started flowing in, particularly Bitcoin sort of related capital. So I was obviously tied to the bull markets and the bear markets. And
Yeah.
I think particularly the bull markets, people were very interested in mining in El Salvador. But I think, back then I had a tendency that, or our strategy was to turn our Bitcoin mining farms into what we still call sovereign mining farms. I mean, we didn't want to depend on someone else's energy that could one day just tell us, listen, we're gonna sell this energy to you 10 times more expensive, or we're just not gonna sell you energy because you're using it for Bitcoin, and I don't believe in Bitcoin. So we started with this idea in El Salvador that if you really want to be sovereign, then you need to own the generation. You need to own the energy that you're using. And that really doesn't happen in any hydrocarbon sort of sphere where you're using natural gas or you're using coal or oil or whatever. I mean, unless you're a massive company and you actually extract the natural gas, you're probably
Yeah.
just buying from the US or Russia or some other jurisdiction that can be geopolitically influenced against Bitcoin. I mean, a good example of that is China in 2021, which we just discussed. I mean, in the flip of a switch, the click of a button, or the signing of a paper, they suddenly cut 50% of the hash rate. The same thing could happen now. Say if the US suddenly decided to ban Bitcoin mining. It's obviously not going to happen now, but it could have. Under Biden, it could have definitely been a possibility. And they immediately eliminate more than 50% of the hash rate. So I decided I wanted, I envisioned a site that produced off-grid its own energy, and it used that energy to mine Bitcoin. And that was it. I mean, you generate energy, you consume it on Bitcoin mining. And so obviously we had to look at the forms of energy that could achieve that, but also the resources available in El Salvador. And I mean, that was the real sort of limit or the test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember when you guys made the announcement, and I will just be blunt, like I thought, okay, this is just like a marketing gimmick, because I've lived in El Salvador for a long time, and the electricity here is ridiculously expensive. It's one of my biggest complaints. And the climate doesn't seem great for mining either, because it tends to be hot and humid. And so I've always been perplexed at, okay, how is this economical, or how can this actually work as a business? So that's why I'm excited to have you here to explain it. And I don't pretend to know the energy markets or to know mining, but just from my experience, when people would ask me, I was like, yeah, I think it's just like a marketing thing. I don't think it's real. So tell me.
It was the usual response back then, and we were okay with the sort of media's response when we launched, because they were right. I mean, there is absolutely no way that you can mine Bitcoin profitably in the third most expensive energy market in Central America. There's just no way. For those who know about energy prices, the energy price in El Salvador is $200 to $220 a megawatt hour, so it's completely unfeasible. So we were okay with the response. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and you need to be more like $30, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be sort of one of the big competitive firms in the world, you need to be inside the $25 to $35 range. So, it's impossible.
Yeah.
10% of what the retail price is in El Salvador, that's what you needed.
And I had known even going back, 10 years, that was one of the complaints I heard from people in industry here was, the wages are good and competitive, but the power prices are so high that any industry that consumes a lot of power is just not economical.
Yeah, it's they're extremely high, and I'll probably give a little bit more context on this, but the reason they're so high is because we have a lot of big renewable. So we have a lot of hydro, which is our main generator. About 34% of our energy is hydro.
Is it that high?
Huh?
It's that high?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of hydro.
And is that more recent? I know they brought a new
no
system on in the last few years.
The first big hydro, which if I'm not mistaken, it's Cerrón Grande, and I don't have the actual numbers right now, but it was built in 1955, and it was our first sort of U.S. sponsored energy project.
Okay.
And we built that massive dam that it flooded a big part of El Salvador. We have a very large artificial lake called Suchitlan. It's a dammed lake, and
is that by Suchitoto?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the one you see from the which is an amazing town, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, back then, El Salvador, as in many other countries in Latin America, it was flooded by corruption. So if you had a budget of, say, $1 billion, only 20% of that would actually reach the project, and then 80% of that would just disappear through the hands of corrupt officials and other countries and so on. Or we would have to sign massive debt agreements that would essentially yield the price of that energy to be a ridiculous amount. So we're paying the price of very expensive energy that was developed in the 50s and the 60s. Our first geothermal plant, if I'm not mistaken, came in 75, then the second one in 92. Then now we obviously have natural gas, which is not much better, but it is cheaper. We have our bunker generators. We have wind, we have solar, and so on.
And the bunker, that's basically diesel or the low-grade diesel.
That's low-grade diesel. Very bad for the environment. Yeah. Not that I'm a massive environmentalist.
But that's still a large percentage is produced that way, right?
Not anymore, but it is the last generator.
Okay.
And the way, in a nutshell, and there is a very complicated formula to get the energy price for every individual in El Salvador. But in a nutshell, pretty much it is the price set by the most expensive and final generator. That's the price that the entire system has to pay.
Okay.
So those diesel generators that are extremely inefficient and very expensive, they set the price. Because energy is an amazing business because the economy cannot afford to make you lose. They have to make you at least break even, because if not, you lose money, then you turn off your plant and no one has energy. So the system has to ensure that those bunker plants, they make enough money so that they can continue supplying that small portion of energy that they still supply, 8% or so. That's, a couple of reasons why the energy price is more expensive. Now, you mentioned cooling. Back then, when we first came here, we knew we couldn't mine in El Salvador back in 2021, 2022 or so. Immersion cooling was just starting. Now it's the industry standard.
Does that mean it doesn't really matter the ambient temperature of where you're mining, or does it still have some impact?
It has very, very small, a very, very small impact. I've mined in the north of Norway, in Mo i Rana, in Alta, Finland, which are extremely cold places. And we've mined in Colombia, in Paraguay, we've mined in Ethiopia, we've mined, in extremely hot and arid places, and, performance is pretty much the same. If you're immersed, operating expenses are pretty much the same as well because, no environmental sort of, no dust or anything will damage your machine. So OpEx is pretty much the same. At most, maybe you'll have to cool the liquid a little bit more, but it will not result in a significantly different operation.
That makes sense.
So now the limit,
and the humidity doesn't have an impact either once you're doing immersion mining.
And for those that don't know, immersion cooling is sinking your machine in mineral oil and cooling that oil or that liquid, so that keeps the machine cool. And then the other form is air cooling, which is just running it through air and cycling that air. Back then, Bitcoin mining was so profitable that even places had air conditioning only for the mining machines.
I remember that.
Was crazy. But anyway, so now the barrier of hot and cold, or what hemispheres I can mine in, it didn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore. Because of immersion cooling. But back in 2019,
and it's just curious, what percentage of mining now is immersion? Is it like 90%, or is it? If in regards to us, more than 80% of our mining is through immersion. I would say maybe globally it might be 50-50, but it keeps moving more and more that direction.
It keeps moving into that direction because once you get rid of the overheating problem, you can overclock your machines and you can play with the loads and so on. You can do a lot of very fun stuff. That is another massive benefit for Bitcoin mining, which is load balancing, which happens a lot in Texas. I mean, when there's a lot of supply of cheap renewable energy, then they just overclock the machines to consume all that energy so that the market is not flooded with cheap energy. So you can do a lot of things by doing immersion cooling. Anyway, back in, I remember 2019 or 2020, we developed this map essentially pointing out where you could mine. And you could only mine in the countries that were cold. So very far up north in Norway, Finland, or the U.S., Seattle, Canada, all that, where we had a site in Canada back then as well because it was very cold. But mining in Central America was unheard of. I mean, there's no way. It's way too hot. But now it really doesn't matter.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I always wondered that's one thing that could never make sense to me. But yeah, the way you explain it.
Yeah, and we tested it here. We started testing in 2022. We launched our first mine here, just to sort of test out whether we could air cool. Our geothermal, Salvadoran geothermals are way up in the mountains where it's not so warm. I mean, it's a little bit cooler. So we started testing.
Yeah, but I remember seeing the ones in Berlin, and those were all air cooled, at least initially, and so that's why I kind of was questioning.
And that was the result of testing a lot of different ASIC models with a lot of cooling options. I mean, we ran air conditioners. We were trying to find the most efficient way. So obviously, if we put air conditioners on, they would work, but it would be too expensive. So we tested a lot, and then the geothermal mining that's happening currently in El Salvador is a result of that. I mean, we didn't have to immersion cool the ones up in the volcano because it's pretty cool there. If I were to go back, I would probably immerse them. But back then, immersion cooling was very expensive as well. Now it's still a significant capex, but it's not as bad as it was back then. Where you would almost spend twice your mining capex on cooling alone. So
you guys have solved the heat and the climate issue, but how do you solve the more blatant power prices are just crazy high here? I mean, I know every time I get my electric bill every month, I'm just like.
Yeah, you need solar panels or something. But yeah, I mean. It seemed like the unsolvable issue, and it's why we started investing in a lot of other things. We started generating energy, and we started investing in tourism and infrastructure and so on way before we even thought about mining in El Salvador. I mean, we thought about it. We just very quickly realized that
Yeah.
it was unfeasible.
So what type of tourism things were you guys investing in? And I don't know if it's public or not, or if you can't mention
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we were analyzing restaurants, hotels,
Okay.
and so on. We wanted to open the tourism market, which was obviously, it was booming. It's still
Yeah.
booming. Real estate market is also booming. So, we were focused on that, on leveraging the fact that El Salvador was growing. So we started buying real estate and tourism and so on.
Okay.
But obviously, what we did want to do is mine in Bitcoin country, because if there is one thing that we've always protected as a vision is that that we could easily mine in countries that are very cheap to mine, like Russia or Georgia. Was Georgia the country, not the
Yeah.
state? They have very cheap energy, and you could plug in and mine there. Or many countries in South America have very, very cheap energy.
Like a lot of people have gone to
But, I mean,
Paraguay.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, does it really make sense when, are you solving an issue when you go plug in, use some of their energy, but then after a year, they're going to either seize your machines, they're going to increase the price of your energy, and they're just going to destabilize the hash rate, which, by the way, is extremely volatile. I mean, hash rate has been growing all the time, but it's very volatile. There's a lot of drawdowns
Yeah.
and so on, which they're not good for the Bitcoin network. I also just want to say that I don't believe that you can accumulate more Bitcoin by mining rather than buying it. For most people, it is better to just buy Bitcoin. Hell, even for us, we would have more Bitcoin now if we would have just bought a lot of Bitcoin at the time rather than invested in a lot of ASICs and mined Bitcoin. And this is something that we know, our investors know, of course.
Yeah.
But we decide that we want to be part of the Bitcoin network, and a very big part, a very important part of the Bitcoin network are the miners. But I just wanted to clarify that we're not doing it because we want a huge mountain of Bitcoin in the end. I mean, we know we'll have probably less Bitcoin if we just bought $1 billion in Bitcoin right now, we'd probably have more Bitcoin than if we just invested $1 billion in mining. But we're okay with that. So we had to, the way we had to solve it was developing our own energy. And that's how we solved it in the end. We ran a couple of proof of concepts. We developed some hydro plants. We developed some PV plants.
PV, is that solar?
Solar, yeah.
Okay.
We analyzed the data for the existing wind generators, and we analyzed the geothermal generators. We tried to figure out a way that we could lower the price of energy for ourselves. And here's where it all comes down to, which is LCOE, which is levelized cost of energy. So if you generate your energy, that energy has a cost. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on what sort of energy, but say on PV, it's on solar, it's the amount of megawatts that you're going to produce in 25 years divided by the capex of your operation, or the other way around. And that gives you your cost per megawatt hour. And so the problem with solar is that obviously it only generates when it's the day.
Yeah.
And so we also looked into wind. Now, wind has a very similar LCOE. As long as we were able to control the costs significantly and maintain a decent OPEX, we could lower the LCOE, we could lower the cost of the energy to be competitive with other markets while still maintaining jurisdictional security, which in my opinion, jurisdictional security is much more important than your energy price. I mean, as long as you're not losing on your energy price, you should be caring more about the longevity of your operation.
But just from a business point of view, not, take away like your desire to protect the Bitcoin network, like wouldn't you still be in better position to just sell your power to the general market in El Salvador at that point? Because it's it starts at such a high level that it seems like it'd be a very profitable energy market to enter if you were able to produce at a cost that was even somewhat competitive to be mining with.
I mean, in the end, we are. So right now we're funding our geothermal operations because the thing about geothermal is that it produces 100% of the time. It's not intermittent whatsoever, but it's also very expensive and it takes a long time. So in order to reduce the cash burn that's associated with geothermal, we're developing wind and solar, which is intermittent, or we have developed.
Sorry, you said geothermal and then you said hydro. Which
No,
were you?
geothermal.
Geothermal.
Hydro is we immediately realized that it was a no-go.
Okay.
Because, well, you've been around El Salvador. Our
Yeah.
rivers aren't exactly, they're not flooding.
No.
We don't have many rivers to power more hydroelectric. And so to answer your question, I mean, we are selling to the grid.
Okay.
And that's a good thing about El Salvador, which is that, well, the good thing for the generators and the bad thing for the consumer is that if you're a consumer, you have to pay a very expensive price of energy. If you're a generator, they have to pay you a very
Yeah.
expensive
Yeah,
price
yeah.
for the energy. So, when we generate energy, we sell it into the spot market because we're producing intermittently. We're not producing 100% of the time, which is what you need for mining Bitcoin. You need energy all the time. So during the day that we're producing a lot of wind and solar, we sell all of that to the grid. We self-consume a portion of it. We sell the rest to the grid, say 80%.
And is that, I know that a lot of times solar and wind are producing at times when the system doesn't need it. In El Salvador, does the system need it during the day?
It needs it, absolutely. El Salvador is one of those energy economies that don't fluctuate significantly during the night and day.
Okay.
Because the way our industry is composed, we have a lot of maquilas, a lot of sort of textile manufacturers that work 3 shifts. So they work, around the clock. So that isn't to say, I mean, we know that with the energy that we are building, we can probably build out a bit more solar, and that's it. I mean, I don't want El Salvador to become a solar-dependent country.
Yeah.
We've seen how that turns out. I mean, Germany, So our play is more long-term. I mean, we're building wind and solar so we can just mine with cheap energy. Yes, we could probably sell it to the grid, and I wouldn't say make more money, but we could probably make money safer. But backtracking and looking at spot market prices and what is called hash price, which is the price in Bitcoin per petahash or terahash that they will that the network pays you for mining. I would say a really good estimate is that you will make more money mining Bitcoin than selling it to the spot market. But we have the best of both worlds. I mean, when mining is okay, we can increase the efficiency of our miners by decreasing the consumption and mine Bitcoin with it while we're still selling to the grid. Okay. I mean, we can sell to the spot market and we can consume it. But either way, our intention right now is not really making a massive profit. We're generating revenue and all. We really just want to reduce the cash burn with geothermal. That's the end goal.
Okay.
We want to be the first private company in El Salvador to develop a geothermal energy plant.
So do you guys have like a plant construction going on right now?
Yes. So we have, we have several.
Okay.
So we have Metapan, which is a wind plant. In El Salvador, there's really only one hotspot for wind energy, and that is in the northern side of El Salvador in Metapan. So we're developing 52 megawatts of energy there. We're developing 54 megawatts of solar in a location I will not disclose.
Okay.
We're also building 2 transmission lines, one 38 kilometer and one 7 kilometer. Both are 115 kilovolts. And then the one that is, the furthest down the road is, the one that's more advanced in construction is the Conchagua solar plant. That's 36.4. I'll show you some photos and maybe you can post them on the video. But we're making amazing progress on that. And then also in Conchagua is the geothermal plant. So through a lot of, I would say, desktop and surface studies, we have identified a geothermal reservoir that we can dig into.
Okay.
It still means that we need to dig 1,500 meters down the earth through rock, through all that heat.
And is that considered, I've read some stuff talking about the theoretical, like, super deep wells. Would that be, or is that a super deep well, or is that just the normal stuff that El Salvador's already utilizing?
Yeah, it's the normal stuff El Salvador's already utilizing, but I wouldn't say it's the normal stuff for geothermal. They're usually deeper down, and then it's not one of those super deeps, like the Cola Super Deep, that, if I might be mistaken, but I think it's 12,000 meters.
Okay.
So it's nowhere near that. It's a conventional well. It's also a conventional geothermal energy plant. You know, a binary cycle. You bring up heat from the geothermal reservoir, then you re-inject water, and then you sort of, you maintain that binary cycle so that you can always extract energy from it.
And is water scarcity an issue in that process? I know El Salvador has a lot of precipitation, but is that an issue? Is that an
Not at
issue
all.
environmentalists bring up? Is it
At least not at this stage.
Okay.
That we're not, and I just want to make that clear. We're not generating now, so it might be when we get to that stage in 3 or 4 years, but it is not now. I mean, according to all the studies, and we've done hydrology studies, we've done geohydrology studies as well. There is no, there's not going to be a shortage of water.
okay?
I would say the largest risk right now for developing our geothermal plant is that we don't hit the spot. I mean, that's a problem with geothermal. I mean, it's
Can you not just like use imaging in the ground to see where it's hot and drill into that? Is that way too simplistic, or what's?
it's way too simplistic,
Yeah.
but it's also a very simplified version of what they do to sort of, they collect fluids and liquids, and they do a lot of sort of geological tests. Definitely not so deep as to know for sure, but it gives you a really good idea of where to dig. And by the time you dig a confirmation well, which will essentially confirm the resource, and then you dig your production wells, which those are the actual ones that go to 1,500 meters.
And what's the cost of something like that to bring
I mean,
online?
per drill, per production well, it might be around $5 to $7 million.
Okay.
Yeah. In our case, we're going to need 8 production wells. So, it's a significant cost.
Yeah.
It's and not many investors will want to bankroll a 4-year project that you will literally see nothing but a hole for 4 years. But then after 4 years, you have perfect energy. In my opinion, the perfect form of energy. I'm a big nuclear fan as well, but the reality with nuclear, and I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this, but the reality with nuclear is that either you go big or you go home. There's no, I know about the SMRs and the small modular reactors and 400 megawatts with thorium or whatever. It's
So you don't buy that?
no, we'll have it in 15 years, maybe
Okay.
20, 25 realistically. What we do have now, and we've had since 1933, is geothermal energy. I mean, it's using the energy, the heat from our core. And it's worked really well for El Salvador. And going back to the energy price, currently, one of the cheapest forms of energy that El Salvador produces is geothermal energy. I would say the only one that beats it might be solar, and only some solar might generate at a cheaper LCOE. The other thing is that when you build solar, you build it for 25 years. Our oldest geothermal plant has already been operating for 50 years.
Plus, it's 24/7.
Yeah, it's 24/7.
Unlike solar.
So, I mean, what we want to build is that eventually we'll have an off-grid geothermal plant that powers a Bitcoin mining farm.
Okay.
And that's the end goal.
Yeah.
It's still far away, but we'll get there.
And do you think you can get that cost in that 25 to 35 range that you said it needs to be to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's for sure. We'll obviously you have to do it, but so far our estimates show that we will be below that. We will be mining. We're already below that with our renewables. With solar, with what's called the SPY, which is a solar specific yield. So the actual, I would say, irradiation that the sun brings to the earth in El Salvador, it's quite good. So per square meter, you generate quite a bit of energy. And as long as your capex can be lowered so that you don't spend more than, say, 600,000 or 700,000 per megawatt, then you can bring your capex in the mid 30s. Including cost of capital, including depreciation, including all those things. And wind is a very similar thing. I mean, as long as you do your studies right, you target good wind resources, then you can be in that range. Now, if we want to surpass that range, we need to build a geothermal that doesn't cost $1 billion and that we develop it quite fast. I mean, 3 or 4 years.
So how much of the cost of electricity in El Salvador is the generation? How much of it is just inefficient transmission? I've noticed that I believe most of the power companies here are foreignly owned. How much of it is them just making excessive profits? Like, what's your sense of the electricity market in El Salvador?
Well, I'll start by this. Transmission is actually really good in El Salvador.
Okay.
And I mean high voltage transmission. Now, high voltage transmission is owned by an autonomous government-owned company called ETESAL. So they own all of those ugly big transmission lines that you see, the high voltage ones, the 115 kilovolt ones. There would be no Volcano Energy without really good transmission. Because of the nature of the project, that we're sort of gathering small resources from various places in the country, we need to centralize those, and we centralize them through the transmission lines. What's terrible, in my opinion, is the distribution network, and those are private. Those are owned by private companies. I will not mention, but there's only 2 of them, so it's very easy to know.
Okay.
You just check your bill, and
but they're foreign owned, right?
yeah, they're foreign owned, and which is unfortunate. But then again, I mean, it's also,
I mean, not that I'm against that, but it was kind of surprising to me to see that I was like, but I don't know what the history is there.
I don't like the margin they take, but I also understand why they're allowed to take it. Back when no one wanted to invest in El Salvador's infrastructure, they invested in it, so they deserve to, to get a bang for their buck. But in a very high level, I would say that only half of the cost of energy in El Salvador is generation. And that is because most of the generators I know, and we generated energy, by the way, only for our fund has invested in energy generation, not for Bitcoin mining, just for the selling of energy in PPAs, which are power purchase agreements or to the spot market. So I can tell you what we sell our energy at, the price is half or less than half of the retail market. So somewhere along the lines,
I think we're paying like 32 cents a kilowatt hour or something, maybe even more than that now here at the beach.
Yeah, well, you just got a new substation, I think, the Tamanica substation, so that will bring it up a little bit. But you'll get less power outages. But no, I mean, the reality is that say if energy prices are $220 per megawatt hour, which is 22 cents, by the way, maybe 10 cents is given to the generator. Probably 1 to 2 cents is given to transmission. The rest of it is either given to the distribution companies or the commercialization companies. There's no other middleman. So that's where the price goes. It goes to fund the small little cables and the power that runs through those distribution lines. And those are anything that's above 115 kilovolts is owned by a private distribution company. Now, the way that Volcano Energy, obviously it's we want to mine Bitcoin and we want to do it through a geothermal plant, but we also have a social aspect to it. And at no point will we consume 100% of our energy. We will always inject that into the grid. We do know, however, that we will not even, we won't do anything to the price of energy. I mean, we are generating more than 200 megawatts, but even if we injected all of it, we will probably not change the energy price, at least not in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
But what we want to prove is that it is feasible, economically feasible, to mine in Bitcoin country if you're willing to invest and wait a little bit. It is feasible to have a fully sovereign Bitcoin mining operation that will last forever, and I mean literally forever, or at least as long as there's volcanoes and hot stuff under the earth. Yeah.
That brings up another question I had. Does that ever, do you ever deplete the heat from a region? Like, does that ever happen with a geothermal plant? Like it was all dispersed?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we've seen it in the U.S., in Canada, Iceland. There's something that you have to do very careful, which is geothermal well management or geothermal reservoir management. I mean, the energy is not infinite, so it comes from somewhere. And if you extract too much of it too quickly, then you can easily sort of dry the well up. But in El Salvador, we haven't depleted any geothermal well, any geothermal reservoir, sorry. And in fact, we're generating much more now than we were with the same plant 50 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take you off track, but that was just
No
another
worries.
question I had.
But I would say the summary is that we really want to invest in this form of energy that has been long forgotten by El Salvador. Back in the 70s or 80s, El Salvador was known as a pioneer in the world. It was known as a pioneer in geothermal energy.
Yeah.
I mean, we developed beautiful plants. Ahuachapan, they're just beautiful plants that supply 24% of our energy to this day. I mean, decisions that some people took 50 years ago supply 23% of the energy to this day.
Which is crazy if you
Which is
think
crazy
about
to
that,
think
yeah.
about. But when I started through this route and our team started through this route and we started talking to people in Iceland and Canada and South Africa about our idea to develop a geothermal plant, they said, why are you talking to me? I mean, you guys have the experts. And I was like, no, there's no one left. The geothermal talent that this country had, it disappeared.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't build a geothermal plant since 1992, at least a big one.
Yeah.
They will unveil a very small one soon, but one of the big ones we haven't built. El Salvador used to have its own drills. There was a company, another sort of autonomous company owned by the government called Perforadora Santa Barbara. Maybe some of your viewers know about it. And they used to own one of the most precious things for any geothermal developer, which is the geothermal drill. I mean, we could drill our own geothermal wells, and they just rusted away through corruption.
Really?
and through mismanagement.
Yeah.
And so it is an energy that is worth bringing back. It is an energy that will solve what in my opinion is the second most crucial issue that El Salvador has ever had. The first one, we got Bukele to fix that quite quickly, which was violence. The next one, you could argue it's the economy, but there's no economy without energy,
Yeah.
and there's definitely no cheap energy in El Salvador. So we need
No,
cheap
and
energy.
I think if El Salvador they don't even have to be the cheapest, but if energy price was just average, I think a lot of businesses would locate here because there's advantages. You have a great workforce. You have a government that's very good to work with. You have, decent shipping. You have a lot of things going for it, but the energy thing is really holding us back, I feel like.
And there's also a very expensive premium that companies have to pay for the reduction of jurisdictional risk or stability.
Yeah.
The stability of El Salvador for, AI companies to come and build their data centers. That things in El Salvador changed in 2019, and they're never going back. El Salvador is never going to be the old El Salvador ever again, because the switch has changed in Salvadoran people. the culture is different. The first thing that one of the first things that you asked me is if when I came back to El Salvador, did I feel weird? I mean, yes. And now I would feel weird to go back to that old El Salvador.
yeah.
It's a different country, and the people in El Salvador are different. So El Salvador is never changing.
Well, I noticed this last year we went to Medellin for a Bitcoin conference, and I've never been one to shy away from dangerous play. I mean, moved to El Salvador when it had the highest murder rate in the world. Safety's never been top on my list, but I felt it for the first time, and I didn't realize how used to feeling safe I had gotten. All of a sudden, I realized I can't just pull my phone out like somebody's going to snatch it, and it was this weird feeling to be like, whoa, I'd like to get back to El Salvador where I feel safe.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I'm going to South America next week, and we have some operations in South America, so I always have to go, and I always get reminded by the Uber drivers like, listen, be careful, don't pull your phone out when it's too late at night and stuff like that, and it feels like I'm in a different universe.
Yeah.
El Salvador is. I think it's very hard to understand for people that haven't been here to realize just how safe it is. It's incredible, safer than Switzerland, and I mean I lived in Switzerland, so it was hard to believe when I saw that. I thought it was like propaganda or something, but then I mean I saw the numbers and it makes sense, and you feel it. So obviously, I would say El Salvador needs a lot of more things. Thankfully, we have amazing builders that are building it. People that are taking massive undertakings, even harder challenges than the ones me and my team are taking with Volcano Energy or with our other projects. So I'm confident that if El Salvador is a different country now, it will be a different country in 10 years. And hopefully in 10 years or hopefully even less than that, we'll have cheaper energy for you and your podcast, and
yes.
You won't need solar panels on your roof. You'll just get cheaper energy. Yeah.
So what would you say to other funds out there that are maybe thinking about El Salvador or businesses that are looking at El Salvador as a place to move operations? How would you encourage them, or how would you tell them, hey, still be realistic, we're still early in this? What would be your advice?
Well, my realistic advice is, do it. It's if your vision is aligned with Salvadoran vision, then do it. Because when the country matches what these funds or investors or companies want it to be, it will come at a huge premium, at a very huge expense. I mean, real estate right now, it's quite expensive, but it'll be much more expensive in 5 to 10 years from now when we have built the country that we want to live in. So, I mean, I'm seeing part of my job is meeting with investors and companies that want to move here and helping them sort of navigate this, the banking space and the investment space and the tokenization space, the legal stuff, all that. And it's growing exponentially. I mean, the time I have to give to these sort of meetings where I'm just meeting people that are coming here is growing rapidly. And that is the same experience I've had talking with a lot of lawyers that focus on sort of international companies coming here. They tell me, like, listen, 2 years ago, it was maybe 10% of my week was meeting these people. Now it's 90. And everyone's just moving here. And eventually it will be too late. I mean, I still think El Salvador is early. Bitcoin is definitely early. So, do it now, because after that, you'll just, you'll be left behind.
And do you see like a long-term future for you guys in the mining industry here, or do you think that mining's going to get to a point where it's challenging to do profitably, or what's your? I mean, I know it's already getting there for a lot. You look at the miners, just the price of their stocks, and they're struggling. So I'm just curious as to what your outlook is for miners.
Mining, or at least Bitcoin mining, is a race to 0% margin, and that's fine. There's still a long time for that to happen, but I don't think the mining sort of gold rush is over yet. I think we still need to grow the strength of the Bitcoin network. We still need to find new players that will not be bound by sort of only financial incentives. So if I develop and we're joking with one of our investors a while back. I mean, we're going to develop an off-grid geothermal plant that can only supply energy to a mining farm. What if Bitcoin becomes unprofitable? And so he told me, for us, it'll never be unprofitable because it's more profitable to use the energy mining Bitcoin than just not use the energy, So eventually I think that will happen, sort of perpetual mining companies. I saw one the other day, they raised, I don't know, 60 million or 70 million, and it's a solar sort of satellite that mines Bitcoin, and it just tracks the sun so that it always has energy. I'm sure we'll see some nuclear sites that will always run. There's not a thing like too much energy, but definitely a balance will be reached, as in everything. I mean, eventually, like right now, we could say we're in the AI data center gold rush, but eventually, margins will be squeezed. There will be more competition, and what happened in 2022, that everyone just started mining, will happen again. We care about the infrastructure behind it, not really the short-term profit of mining and making a buck right now.
Yeah. You'd mentioned offline before we started about a housing initiative. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about what your guys' involvement is with that.
Yeah, for sure. Just because I don't want people to think that all I do is energy. I would say we're really committed, obviously me as a Salvadoran, but also our group of investors and our entire fund and our team is committed in solving whatever we can solve for El Salvador. And one of those things are, as you probably experience, I mean, housing prices are through the roof.
Yeah. Especially like middle class or lower middle class,
Exactly.
like housing options.
Yeah. We ran an analysis and we saw that the best path forward for our fund is to give loans to people that extreme crazy expensive loans to low income people so that they can buy interest housing. That was sort of what the numbers.
So they can buy what?
So that they can buy low income housing or social interest housing.
Uh-huh.
So that was what the numbers and the analysts told us. Like, listen, this is where you guys can make the most return.
Because these projects are selling below market rate, it makes sense for them to borrow at high interest, or what is the reasoning behind it?
Because you get the collateral.
Uh-huh.
Say a house at $45,000 that that next year is going to be $50,000 or $55,000. And if the people don't pay for the loan, you can just take the house and sell it again in the market and finance it again. So
and are the laws pretty workable as far as that goes?
There's a free market regarding social income housing. There is some limits regarding the funding that people can get.
I mean more as far as the process. If you do have to repossess a house, are the laws pretty straightforward?
Pretty straightforward, as with any loan. But what I'm getting at is that the numbers showed us that was the most sort of the path we should go if we wanted to maximize profits. And so we decided that's exactly what we want to disrupt. So the low-income housing market.
And so you guys are specifically doing loans to people. You're not building housing.
No, we're not doing loans. We're building houses.
Oh, you are building. Okay.
Yeah. That's what the analyst said that we should
the analyst
invest our
told
money.
you that, but you guys okay.
But we said, the real estate market is artificially propped up currently. I'm not saying it's going to blow up. It's probably going to last a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe long enough for it to even matter if it blows up. But the truth is that people that make minimum wage, a mom and dad, they cannot afford a social interest home, which is the cheapest sort of minimum standard of living that people in El Salvador have to have. Now you can see sort of lower levels of quality of those homes. You've seen the little huts with sort of metal roofs and so on, but you've also felt the earthquakes in El Salvador. So one of those and those houses are gone. They're not safe for people to live. So we decided we wanted to build low-income housing. We want to compete with the local companies that are currently supplying the market with these low-income housing. I think they lack competition, and therefore their product lacks quality, and the price has been going up and up, but the quality has never increased. So we decided to start with our 500 house project. It's our pilot project. We ran one before of that of 92 houses. We built it quite good.
And I'm just curious. So what was what is the price point that those houses sell at, and are you actually able to sell them at a profit, or do you take a loss on them, or what was the?
No, you sell them at a profit, and the cheapest you can buy a house is $45,000, and our house is 51 square meters, so it's below the $1,000 per square meter mark. But then, the competition or the housing market, the low-income housing market in El Salvador sells, at the square meter at 1,400, 1,500, and it's crazy. I mean, it's completely unattainable for the people that are making the minimum wage, and in reality, it's the backbone of the economy are all these people. 70% of the people in El Salvador that make minimum wage, that are unbanked. I mean, Bitcoin gave them a path to financial inclusion, but who cares about Bitcoin when you can't live?
Yeah.
Or when if it rains, your metal roof sort of leaks water, or if there's an earthquake. I mean, the first thing you're going to think about is protecting your kids or anything. You're not going to think about your cold wallet or something like that. So the reality is that financial inclusion requires peace and stability, first of all. Now, violence is gone, but we need to give an adequate living standard. So
what's the minimum income a family would need to make to buy one of those homes?
Around $900 a month,
okay.
between mom and dad,
Yeah.
and so on.
So that's two
minimum wage.
Two minimum wage earners.
A little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Wage.
Okay.
The idea is that eventually, that is the point of it all. A mom and dad that makes minimum wage cannot afford any home.
Yeah.
In El Salvador, they have to build their own. Sort of go find some scrap metal and some wooden post and build their home. So we want to start growing our proof of concept. We're launching. Well, we already launched. We're building 500 homes. After that, we'll reevaluate. We'll see what we can make more efficient, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make things more efficient, and after that, build 1,000 homes or 2,000 homes, and eventually grow from that. The housing deficit in El Salvador is massive. Hundreds of thousands of homes are missing of these sort of homes.
Yeah.
Low interest homes. Low income homes. Yeah. And so that is a really big focus point for the next couple of years. I mean, energy, we will continue to develop it. Eventually, we'll probably be able to supply our energy directly to these homes, so that we can cut off 50% of the surcharge that we were discussing from the distribution companies. But it is the way El Salvador is going, and I think it's a really good way, especially considering what other builders are doing. And I talk to them all the time. I mean, most of the people that are here currently building, you never see them on Twitter sort of complaining about something that is not perfect or not US-like or whatever. They're actually building, and I admire all of them. So I think anyone that wants to come to El Salvador, just they need to realize that El Salvador is not the place they want to be. I mean, that's what building means. I mean, they have to be uncomfortable for a while, but then they'll lead. They'll lead the change.
Oh, I think that's a good note to finish on. Is there anything else we didn't cover? Or?
That's pretty much it.
No, I appreciate you coming on and educating me on the mining and the energy stuff, because that's something that's always kind of perplexed me. And I have people ask me all the time, and I'm like, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But now I feel like I have a little bit of a handle on it.
It's the usual thing I get, like, how can I mine in El Salvador? And the short answer is you can't.
Yeah.
You can't unless you invest hundreds
Tens
of
millions, hundreds of
millions.
Yeah.
And wait a couple of years, and then you'll have energy.
That makes sense. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll have to have you back on in 6 months or a year and get an update on how some of these things are going.
No, we can ship the studio to one of our sites and do a site visit.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
I like it.
Great.
Paco likes when I make him move all the cameras and everything somewhere. So,
Yeah. 6 months we'll do one.
all right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Mike.